Hey everyone, make sure to subscribe to the channel before we jump in. This story is going to take you deep into family secrets, betrayal, and revenge that simmers for years. Vienna smelled of wet cobblestones and roasting chestnuts as I stepped out of the tram, the crisp November air curling around my coat. Street lamps reflected in puddles like shards of broken glass, and somewhere down the alley, a cafe bell rang, announcing the arrival of late-night patrons. I checked my watch. 7:58 p.m. In 2 minutes, she would be walking into that restaurant, thinking she was untouchable, thinking I was naive enough to ignore the history we shared. She rolled her eyes when I mentioned the dinner. "It's just dinner with my ex," she said, tossing her long hair over her shoulder, her voice casual, detached, almost rehearsed. I smiled. "C'est calm, controlled. Then this," I replied, and my mind already traced the threads of the plan that had been years in the making. Clara. She had been the golden star of our family, my younger cousin, brilliant, ruthless, and beautiful in the way that made everyone else feel invisible. She inherited charm the way some people inherit wealth, and she wielded it like a weapon. But she had underestimated me. Our story began long before that evening. The Weber family, though outwardly respectable and admired in Salzburg society, was a tangle of grudges, hidden debts, and carefully managed reputations. Clara's father, my Uncle Joseph, had been charming but unscrupulous. Her mother, Magdalena, a quiet woman who never spoke unless it served her interests. And me, Matthias Weber, seemingly the obedient, forgotten cousin. On us who learned early that silence was power if you knew how to use it. Clara had a knack for taking what she wanted and leaving destruction in her wake. She had done it before. The family vineyard's profits mysteriously rerouted to her accounts. My grandmother's inheritance quietly funneled into her college fund. My father's company's key contacts slowly diverted toward her ventures. And I watched, and I waited. The dinner she had so carelessly planned was supposed to be with Max Bauer, her former boyfriend, a rising architect from Vienna. She thought I wouldn't care, that it was a harmless social evening, a routine rendezvous to maintain appearances. She didn't know I had already researched Max thoroughly. Financial records, recent investments, vulnerabilities in his projects. I knew exactly how to make the evening unforgettable. And I arrived at the restaurant 2 minutes early, the door opening to a cozy interior filled with the aroma of truffle risotto and roasted duck. Soft jazz played in the background. Candles flickered on the tables, giving the room a warm, golden glow. I took my seat at the far end of the restaurant, near the window, where I could observe without being seen. Clara walked in at 8:02, radiant, confident, entirely unaware of the storm gathering across the table from her. She scanned the room, found Max already seated, and offered her signature smile, warm, engaging. The smile that had ruined more deals, friendships, and marriages than anyone could count. I watched as she lowered herself into the chair, the way she crossed her legs deliberately, the subtle flicker of satisfaction in her eyes when she believed she was in control. She didn't notice the envelope waiting under my napkin, the precise documents that would make this dinner unforgettable. The plan had been meticulous. Months of gathering information, contacts, and leverage. Friends of friends, discreet whispers, confidential letters, all orchestrated to ensure that the moment Clara tried to claim dominance, everything would unravel. I smiled at the thought, sipping my water, pretending to be just another patron. The waiter approached with Max's order, and I noted the way Clara's hand brushed over his, the small gesture of affection that always annoyed me. I kept my expression neutral, almost bored, but inside, anticipation thrummed like a second heartbeat. Midway through the main course, I sent a subtle message to the restaurant manager, who I had secretly briefed. A minor interruption, a delivery of legal notices mistakenly addressed to Max. Clara noticed the sudden commotion, the envelopes, the whispered apologies, the murmured explanations, and her composure faltered. "What is this?" she demanded, her tone sharp but controlled. Max opened the first envelope, his face blanching as he read the contents. Contracts he had signed without full disclosure, allegations from investors. pending lawsuits, all triggered by information I had uncovered and strategically released. Clara's eyes widened. She hadn't expected me to have access to this level of detail, hadn't expected the quiet cousin to be the one who could orchestrate such a perfect storm. "Matthias," she whispered, realizing finally that I was present, that I had engineered every element of this moment. "Yes, Clara," I said, my voice soft but deadly certain. "It seems dinner isn't just dinner tonight. It's also an awakening." She leaned back, the confident mask cracking. For the first time in years, I saw genuine fear and a flicker of respect, though it was bitter, like ash on her tongue. The rest of the evening was chaos in slow motion. Investors called, legal representatives arrived. Max excused himself, pale, muttering about lawyers and damages. Clara tried to recover, tried to charm, tried to assert control, but the web I had spun was too tight, too precise. Every ally she thought she had was neutralized, every avenue of escape blocked. By the time dessert arrived, Clara was quiet, almost reverent. She understood that this was no accident, no fluke, no chance. This was calculated, deliberate, personal. I left before the final course. I'm stepping into the cool night air, the streets silent save for the occasional tram clanging in the distance. Vienna spread before me, the Danube reflecting streetlights like molten gold, the fog curling around the bridges, wrapping the city in its ethereal embrace. In the days that followed, Clara's empire, meticulously built on charm, deception, and manipulation, began to crumble. Partners pulled out, projects stalled, reputations tarnished. The Weber family whispered behind closed doors, but no one openly confronted me. I had played the long game, and now, finally, I had the satisfaction of seeing justice executed with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Yet revenge is never without cost. My father, once proud of his restraint and patience, now eyed me with a mixture of admiration and unease. He had always feared what I was capable of, even as he dismissed me as passive, obedient, harmless. My mother, quietly observing from the background, began to understand that silence does not equal submission. Clara, meanwhile, withdrew into herself, retreating from social functions, declining invitations, her once brilliant charm dulled by the weight of exposure and defeat. And I, standing by the banks of the Danube one early morning, watched the fog lift and the city awaken, feeling the cold wind against my face, tasting the bitter sweetness of long-awaited vengeance. But even as I savored my victory, a subtle unease lingered. Revenge is a fire that warms only briefly before it begins to consume from within. I had destroyed Clara, yes, but in doing so, I had also reshaped my own world, my own morality. When the delicate balance of family that I had once taken for granted, I walked back to my apartment, the street slick with rain, and glanced at the reflection in a shop window. My face looked calm, collected, almost serene, but beneath the surface, beneath the carefully constructed exterior, a storm still brewed. For revenge, I had learned, is never truly complete. It echoes, reverberates, and sometimes returns in ways you least expect. Yet tonight, for the first time in years, I allowed myself a small, private smile. Justice had its hour, and I had been the one to make the clock strike. The city hummed around me, alive and indifferent, and I stepped into it, knowing the game was won, but the story, as always, never truly ended. And somewhere, in the quiet shadows of Vienna's streets, Clara would remember this night forever. I had waited long enough. I had been patient, and now, at last, I had been seen.